She was accused of stealing milk for her son. The lawyer asked for custody. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Teresa Ramirez stared at the metal bars in the small holding room. Cold, grey, humiliating. All for a carton of milk. Her shoulders slumped as she sat on the hard bench, the fluorescent lights above highlighting the dark circles under her eyes and the worry lines etched into her forehead. The holding cell smelled of disinfectant and despair, a scent she never thought would cling to her clothes. "How did I get here?" she whispered, her hands trembling as she pushed her dark hair away from her face. The thin gold band on her finger, the last remnant of a marriage that had disintegrated 2 years ago, caught the harsh light. Outside the small window in the door, officers moved about, paying her little attention. They had bigger cases, real, criminals to process, but here she sat, treated like a common thief. Her son Michael hadn't eaten dinner in 2 days. She told him bedtime stories instead of serving food, made him laugh, tucked him in tight, kissed his forehead. But that morning, he woke up pale, weak. His small voice, asking for breakfast, had broken something inside her. The refrigerator held nothing but condiments and half a bottle of water. Her last paycheck had gone to rent, and the next one was still 3 days away. She had gone to the corner market, Michael's small hand in hers. She begged the market owner to let her pay next week. Mr. Gallo, a man she'd known for 5 years, whose store she'd frequented when times were better, shook his head. Business was business, he said. No credit, no exceptions. "Just 1 carton?" she pleaded, feeling the weight of her son's curious gaze on her back. But when she saw no one was looking, her hands moved faster than her mind. She slipped the milk into her bag, alongside her wallet with its empty billfold and maxed-out credit cards. The cool plastic carton nestled against the worn fabric of her purse. For just a moment, relief flooded her veins. She was caught before she made it to the door. Mr. Gallo's son had been watching the security cameras in the back room. Security, cameras, screaming, shame. The milk cartons spilled across the linoleum floor as they wrestled the bag from her grasp, white liquid spreading, like an accusation at her feet. Her son watched from behind the glass door as they called the police. He was only 6, his brown eyes wide with confusion and fear. When the officers arrived, they were not unkind, but the law was the law. Petty theft was still theft, and someone had pressed charges. "Please," she begged the officers, "please don't take him from me, he's all I have." A neighbor was called, Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down, who agreed to watch Michael until Teresa's situation was resolved. As they led her away, Michael's face pressed against the patrol car window. His small hand splayed on the glass, became the image burned into her mind. Now, 16 hours later, she sat in the holding cell, waiting for her hearing. A public defender had spoken with her briefly, his overworked eyes barely meeting hers as he shuffled through her paperwork. "It doesn't look good," he said flatly. "You have no priors, but given your current financial situation—" He paused, then added with clinical detachment, "Child Protective Services has been notified." The words hit her like a physical blow. CPS, the boogeyman every struggling parent feared. The agency that, despite its noble mission, became in the whispers of her community the people who took children away. When they led her into the courtroom later that day, Teresa stood alone, shaking in her day-old clothes. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh against her sleepless eyes. The wooden podium felt cold beneath her trembling fingers. She looked around the sparse courtroom, no friends or family to support her. Mrs. Chen couldn't leave Michael alone to come. The prosecutor, a young, ambitious man named Victor Grant, spoke with practiced precision. His suit was perfectly pressed, his voice confident. He requested full custody removal, temporary at first, then to be evaluated. "She's a danger to the child," he said, his voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. "Financial instability of this magnitude creates an environment of desperation. The defendant resorted to theft. What might come next when hunger returns? The child deserves stability." That moment broke her. The clinical dissection of her love for her son reduced to a risk assessment. Tears ran down her face as she spoke when given the chance. I didn't steal to buy drugs or alcohol. I didn't steal to escape my pain. I stole to keep my son alive. If that makes me a criminal, then jail me. But don't take him. Please don't take my child. I've given him everything, even what I didn't have. Her voice cracked on the last words. She looked down at her hands, unable to face the judgment in the room. She had worked 2 jobs until the diner where she waited tables at night closed down last month. She had stretched every dollar, skipped meals herself, sold jewelry, clothes, anything she could to keep the lights on and her son fed. One mistake, 1 carton of milk, and the entire fragile structure of their life together threatened to collapse. The room went silent. Even the judge, a stern-faced woman with silver hair, blinked in disbelief at the raw desperation in Teresa's voice. Then something unexpected happened. The prosecutor, Victor Grant, stood again. His posture had changed, his shoulders slumped slightly, the perfect confidence of moments ago wavering. His eyes, when Teresa dared to look up, were red-rimmed. "I withdraw my request," he said, his voice different now, softer, uncertain. Everyone turned to look at him. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Grant, on what grounds?" He cleared his throat. "New information has come to light. I believe—" He paused, swallowing hard. "I believe there are better solutions here than separation." The judge nodded slowly, clearly surprised but not displeased. "Very well. Alternative suggestions?" Victor Grant stepped forward, approaching Teresa. He spoke quietly, but in the hushed courtroom his words carried. "My mother was like you," he said. "She did things she wasn't proud of, to protect me. I hated her for it. And now I understand. I'm sorry." Teresa stared at him, uncomprehending, through her tears. He continued, now addressing both her and the judge. "Your Honor, I suggest community service rather than incarceration, and I would like to connect Ms. Ramirez with the Family Support Program through the DA's office." Then he turned back to Teresa. "They can offer you a job, a real one, stable, with dignity, and legal help and housing support and groceries." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her palm. His fingers were warm against her cold ones. "Your son won't go to bed hungry again," he said. "Not if I can help it." She collapsed into tears, her body betraying the weight of relief and gratitude that suddenly overwhelmed her. The bailiff moved forward, but Victor waved him off, awkwardly placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know what it's like," he whispered so only she could hear. "To feel invisible, to think no one sees how hard you're trying." Teresa had entered the courtroom as a thief, but she left it as a mother, forgiven, restored, and finally seen. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. The Family Support Program office was housed in a nondescript government building 10 blocks from the courthouse. Teresa clutched Michael's hand as they walked through the glass doors 3 days after her hearing. The judge had been surprisingly lenient. 40 hours of community service, a small fine that could be paid in installments, and mandatory participation in the support program Victor Grant had mentioned. Michael looked up at her, squeezing her hand. "Is this where you're going to work, Mama?" Teresa managed to smile, despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. "Maybe, mijo. We're going to talk to some people who want to help us." The reception. Area was painted a cheerful yellow, with children's artwork framing the walls. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes looked up from her computer. "Teresa Ramirez, Mr. Grant is expecting you." Teresa hesitated, surprised. She hadn't expected the prosecutor himself to be involved beyond his courtroom intervention. The receptionist must have noticed her confusion. "Victor heads up the program," she explained. "It's his baby, been running it for 3 years now." She led them down a hallway to an office with a nameplate that read, "Victor Grant, Assistant District Attorney, Program Director." The door was open, and Victor stood when they appeared, a genuine smile warming his features. Gone was the stern prosecutor in the immaculate suit. Today he wore a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms covered in colorful tattoos, something Teresa hadn't noticed in court. "Ms. Ramirez, thank you for coming." He extended his hand, then crouched down to Michael's level. "And you must be Michael. I'm Victor." The boy nodded solemnly, pressing closer to his mother's side. "Come in, please. Have a seat." Victor gestured to the chairs across from his desk. The office was cluttered but organized. Case files stacked neatly, family photos on the shelves, a college diploma hanging slightly askew on the wall. Not what Teresa had expected. "I want to explain what we do here," Victor began, leaning forward on his elbows. "The Family Support Program works with parents facing hardship. We offer job placement, childcare assistance, legal aid, and financial counseling. Our goal is to keep families together by addressing the root causes of crisis." Teresa nodded, still wary. Michael sat quietly beside her, his legs swinging beneath the chair. "There's a position open in our administrative office," Victor continued. "Basic clerical work, but it's full-time with benefits. The pay isn't amazing, but it's stable. And we have after-school care for Michael right in the building until you finish work." Teresa's breath caught. A real job. Benefits. Childcare. It sounded too good to be true. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. In her experience, help always came with strings attached. Victor leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Did you know that 60% of crimes like yours, petty theft, small-scale fraud, are committed by parents trying to provide for their children?" He ran a hand through his dark hair. "We can prosecute them all, fill the jails, overload the foster system, or we can try something different." His eyes drifted to a framed photo on his desk that Teresa couldn't quite see. "Plus, I meant what I said in court." His voice grew quieter. "I've been on the other side." Before Teresa could respond, a knock came at the door. A woman appeared, with a stack of paperwork. "The employment forms you requested, and I've scheduled Ms. Ramirez for orientation tomorrow at 9. The child care center is expecting Michael for a tour in about 15 minutes. She smiled warmly at them before departing. Victor handed Teresa a pen. "It's real. All you have to do is sign." Her hand trembled as she took the pen. "I don't know how to thank you." "Make it work," he replied simply. "That's all the thanks I need." As Teresa began filling out the forms, Michael tugged at Victor's sleeve. "Are you the one who's helping my mom?" Victor nodded. "I'm trying to." Michael's small face grew serious. "The man at the store was mean to her. She just wanted to get me milk." Teresa looked up sharply. "Michael—" But Victor raised a hand. "It's okay. You're right, Michael. Sometimes people don't understand when other people are in trouble." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small box of crayons and some paper. "Would you like to draw while your mum and I talk about boring grown-up stuff?" Michael nodded, accepting the peace offering. As he bent over his drawing, Victor lowered his voice. "There's one more thing, Ms. Ramirez. The charges against you will be expunged after you complete your community service. This won't follow you." Teresa's eyes filled with tears again, but she blinked them back. "I never thought I'd be grateful for getting caught stealing," she whispered. Victor's smile was sad. "Sometimes rock bottom has a foundation you can build on." 6 weeks later, Teresa sat at her desk in the administrative office of the Family Support Program, filing case reports and answering phones. The work was straightforward but satisfying. She had a nameplate now, Teresa Ramirez, administrative assistant, and a small plant that Michael had given her, grown from a seed in his science class at school. Her tiny apartment, once barren from selling everything of value, now had second-hand furniture donated by program staff. The refrigerator remained modestly stocked, but importantly it was stocked. Michael had gained weight, the hollows of his cheeks filling out, his energy returning. But not everything was easy. Some of her co-workers, particularly Diane Winters, the office manager, regarded her with suspicion. They knew she'd come through the program rather than traditional hiring, and whispers sometimes followed her to the break room. "Don't let them get to you," advised Lucia, an older woman who processed intake forms. "Half of them would be one paycheck away from where you were if they lost their jobs." Lucia had taken Teresa under her wing, showing her the office systems, and sharing lunch with her when others kept their distance. Victor Grant remained a puzzling figure. He was rarely in the office, often in court or community meetings, but when their paths crossed, He always asked about Michael and seemed genuinely invested in her progress. Yet he maintained a professional distance that made Teresa wonder if she had imagined the personal connection in that courtroom moment. One evening, as Teresa was preparing to leave, she found Victor in the copy room, struggling with a paper jam. "Need help?" she offered, stepping inside. "I've become the office expert on taming this beast." He stepped back gratefully. "Please, technology has a way of reminding me I'm not as competent as I pretend to be." Teresa expertly opened the machine's panels, located the crumpled paper, and extracted it without tearing. "You just have to know where to look for the source of the problem," she said, closing the copier and restarting it. Victor watched her with an impressed expression. If only all problems were so easily solved. "Like mine?" Teresa asked quietly, testing the boundaries of their carefully maintained professional relationship. He sighed, leaning against the wall. "Your situation was actually simpler than most. You were just a good person in a bad circumstance." He paused. "How is Michael enjoying the after-school program?" "He loves it. He's making friends, getting help with homework. Yesterday he brought home an art project, a cityscape made of cardboard. He said it's where we're going to live someday, in a penthouse." She smiled at the memory. Victor nodded, his expression softening. "Kids are resilient, more than we give them credit for." Teresa hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at her. "Do you have children?" A shadow passed over his face. "No." "But you mentioned your mother." "Ancient history." His tone closed the door on the topic. He straightened up. "I should let you get home to Michael." Teresa nodded, accepting the rebuff. "Good night, Mr. Grant. Good night, Ms. Ramirez." He started to walk away, then turned back. "And Teresa, you're doing well here, really well." The simple praise warmed her beyond reason as she gathered her things and headed to pick up Michael from the childcare center. Will Teresa ever learn the truth about Victor's past? Will the other employees ever accept her as one of their own? And will she be able to build the life she dreams of for Michael? The days turned to weeks, and the rhythms of Teresa's new life began to feel natural. Wake up, prepare breakfast for Michael, walk him to school, then continue to the office for her own workday. In the evenings they would return to their apartment, where Teresa helped Michael with homework before making dinner. Simple meals, but nutritious and, importantly, reliable. The change in their circumstances reflected in small ways. Michael's pants no longer hung from his frame but fit properly. Teresa had been able to buy him new shoes when he outgrew his old ones. She had even started a tiny savings account, depositing $5 each payday, a financial cushion that would have seemed like an unattainable luxury just months ago. But as their external circumstances improved, Teresa found herself grappling with internal demons. Shame continued to shadow her, especially at work. Despite Lucia's friendship and Victor's occasional words of encouragement, she felt marked by her past mistake, perpetually proving herself worthy of the second chance she'd been given. One Tuesday morning, Teresa arrived at the office to find an unfamiliar woman seated at her desk. Diane Winters, the office manager who had never warmed to Teresa, stood nearby with a clipboard. "Teresa," Diane said crisply, "this is Amanda Lopez from the Central Administration Office. She'll be conducting an audit of our files today. I need you to assist her." Teresa nodded, setting down her purse. "Of course. She'll need access to the case files, all of them," Diane added with a pointed look that made Teresa's stomach clench. Did that include her own file? The record of her arrest? The court proceedings? The circumstances that had brought her here? Throughout the morning, Teresa retrieved files as Amanda requested, each time dreading hearing her own name. During lunch break, she found Lucia in the break room. "Do you know what this audit is about?" Teresa asked quietly, unwrapping her sandwich. Lucia shrugged. "They do them periodically. Budget justification, program effectiveness, the usual bureaucratic nonsense." She studied Teresa's worried face. "Why? What's bothering you?" Teresa hesitated, then confessed her fear. "I'm worried they'll see my file. That they'll decide someone like me shouldn't be working here. Lucia's expression softened. Teresa, half the administrative staff came through the program. Why do you think Victor started it? He believes in second chances because he got one himself. Teresa's sandwich paused halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? Lucia glanced toward the break room door, then lowered her voice. It's not my story to tell, but let's just say Victor understands more than you might think. Before Teresa could press for details, Amanda appeared in the doorway. Ms. Ramirez, I need the Wilson family files next. The afternoon crawled by, file after file, until finally Amanda closed her laptop. That's everything. Thank you for your assistance. She gathered her things and left without mentioning Teresa's file. As Teresa was preparing to leave for the day, Diane stopped by her desk. Mr. Grant wants to see you before you go. The summons sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. Had the auditor found something? Was her position in jeopardy? She knocked softly on Victor's open office door. He was on the phone but waved her in. As she waited for him to finish his call, Teresa noticed new photographs on his desk. In one, a much younger Victor stood beside an older woman with his same dark eyes. In another, more recent picture, the same woman sat in a garden, smiling broadly. My mother, Victor said, following her gaze as he hung up the phone. Taken last month at her retirement community. She has your smile, Teresa observed. Other way around, actually, Victor replied with a small laugh. Sorry to keep you, I just wanted to check in about the audit today. Teresa straightened. Everything went fine. Ms. Lopez was very thorough. I'm sure she was. Victor leaned back in his chair. These audits always make everyone nervous, but they're necessary. They help us demonstrate the program's effectiveness. To the county board that funds us. Teresa nodded, relaxing slightly. This didn't sound like a termination conversation. Which brings me to why I wanted to talk to you, Victor continued. We're preparing our annual presentation for the board next month. Statistics, success stories, budget projections, the works. I'd like you to help prepare the materials. Me? Teresa couldn't hide her surprise. You've proven yourself to be organized, detail-oriented, and you understand our mission from a unique perspective. Victor's expression grew more serious. That said, I should warn you that it might mean talking about your own experience, being something of a spokesperson for the program. If that's not something you're comfortable with, I completely understand. Teresa sat very still, processing his words. Being asked to represent the program was a vote of confidence she hadn't expected, but it also meant publicly acknowledging her lowest moment, possibly facing judgment all over again. Can I think about it? She asked finally. Victor nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. He paused, then added, For what it's worth, I think your story could make a real difference. Sometimes people need to see the human face behind the statistics to understand why programs like this matter. As Teresa left his office, her mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Pride at being asked, fear of exposure, and lingering curiosity about Victor's own story. Lucia had hinted at something in his past, and those photographs of his mother raised new questions. What had happened in his life to make him understand hers so well? Outside the building, Teresa found Michael waiting, with his after-school supervisor, Madison. The boy's face lit up when he saw his mother, and he ran to her with a paper clutched in his hand. Mom, look what I drew today. He thrust the paper into her hands. It was a colorful drawing of two stick figures holding hands in front of a house. Home was written across the top in careful block letters. It's beautiful, mijo, Teresa said, her throat tightening. Is this us? Michael nodded eagerly. That's our home. And look, I drew Mr. Victor coming to visit us. He pointed to a third, taller stick figure approaching the house. Teresa raised an eyebrow, surprised. Mr. Victor, why is he coming to our home? Michael shrugged. Because he's our friend. And he looks sad sometimes, like he needs more friends. Out of the mouths of babes, Teresa thought, studying the drawing more carefully. She hadn't realized Michael had noticed Victor at all, much less formed an impression of him. Well, this is going right on the refrigerator when we get home, she promised, carefully folding the drawing and tucking it into her purse. As they walked to the bus stop, Michael chattering about his day, Teresa's mind returned to Victor's proposal. Could she really stand in front of the county board, suited officials with power and privilege, and tell them how she had once been so desperate that she stole milk for her child. Could she bear their judgment, their pity, their potential scorn? But then again, if her story helped secure funding for another year for another mother in her situation, wasn't that worth any amount of personal discomfort? By the time they reached their apartment, Teresa had made her decision. Tomorrow she would tell Victor yes, she would share her story, however painful, because sometimes the things that shame us most are also the things that connect us most deeply to others. Have you or someone you know ever faced a moment where sharing a painful personal experience might help others? Let me know in the comments. The preparation for the county board presentation consumed Teresa's days over the next few weeks. Victor had paired her with Josephine, the program's grant writer, to craft a compelling narrative that would showcase the program's success without feeling exploitative of the people it served. Facts tell, but stories sell, Josephine explained. During their first meeting, we can throw statistics at them all day, but nothing impacts funding decisions like seeing the human impact. Teresa discovered that Josephine had also come through the program 5 years earlier after losing her home to medical bankruptcy following her husband's cancer treatment. It never gets easy telling your story, Josephine admitted as they worked late one evening. But it gets easier, and it matters. My first presentation helped secure a 15% budget increase. That's dozens of families who got help because people in suits finally understood what it means to have nowhere to turn. As they refined the presentation, Teresa found herself growing more comfortable with her own narrative. Not proud of her lowest moment, but no longer consumed by shame either. The theft had happened. It had been wrong. But it had also been an act of desperate love, and most importantly, it wasn't the end of her story. At home, she noticed Michael watching her with curious eyes as she practiced her speech in front of their bathroom mirror. He had grown more confident too in recent months, making friends at school, bringing home good grades, smiling more easily. "Are you going to tell them about the milk?" he asked one night as she tucked him into bed. Teresa paused, surprised by his directness. "Yes, mijo, I am." He nodded solemnly. "Good. Then they'll understand." "Understand what?" she asked, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "That sometimes moms do scary things because they love their kids so much." His eyes were solemn, wise beyond his years. "Like your mom did for you." Teresa froze. "What do you mean, Michael? You told me your mom left school to work and take care of her brothers and sisters when your abuela got sick. That was scary for her, right? But she did it because she loved them." Teresa's eyes filled with tears. She had told Michael that story months ago, never imagining he would make the connection to their own situation. "Yes, that's right." "So it's the same," he concluded simply, yawning. "Night, Mom." "Good night, my love," she whispered, kissing his forehead and turning off the light. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by her son's insight. He was right, of course. Her own mother had sacrificed her education, her dreams to care for her siblings when Teresa's grandmother became ill. Different circumstances, same love. The realization both comforted and challenged her. What other connections had she missed by viewing her actions only through the lens of shame? The following day, Teresa arrived at work to find the office in chaos. Papers were scattered across desks, staff members huddled in worried conversations, and Diane paced frantically near the copier. "What's happening?" Teresa asked Lucia, who looked unusually grim. "Budget freeze," Lucia said tersely. "The county executive issued an emergency spending review. All discretionary programs are on hold pending evaluation." Teresa's stomach dropped. "But our presentation isn't for 2 weeks. How can they decide without even hearing from us?" "Politics," Lucia spat the word like a curse. "The executive's up for re-election, wants to look fiscally responsible to the conservative base. We're an easy target. Handouts for criminals is how his campaign manager described us in the newspaper this morning." Teresa felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. Without funding, the program would shut down. She would lose her job. Michael would lose his after-school care. They would be right back where they started. Or worse, because this time she would have known stability only to have it ripped away. She made her way to her desk on autopilot, her mind racing. Around her, other staff members, many of whom had once been program recipients themselves, wore the same stunned expression. Victor was nowhere to be seen, but his office door stood open. Inside, Teresa could see him on the phone, his face flushed with anger as he paced back and forth. "We can't wait 2 weeks," she heard him say. "By then it'll be a done deal. We need to get in front of the board now, today, if possible." Teresa didn't hear the response, but she saw Victor's shoulders slump. "I understand, yes, we'll be ready, thank you." He hung up and noticed her standing in the doorway. "Teresa, come in, please close the door." She did as he asked, her heart pounding. "Is it true about the budget freeze?" Victor nodded grimly. "It's true, but we've got one shot. The board chair agreed to give us 15 minutes at today's emergency session, at 3 o'clock. 3? Teresa glanced at the clock, barely 4 hours away. "But we're not ready. The presentation—" "Forget the presentation," Victor interrupted. "No PowerPoints, no handouts, no carefully scripted speeches. They need to see who we really are right now." He ran a hand through his hair. "I need you there, Teresa, if you're willing." For a moment, fear paralyzed her. She wasn't prepared to speak today. She hadn't memorized her talking points. She hadn't even decided what to wear. But then she thought of Michael's words from the night before. Sometimes moms do scary things because they love their kids so much. "I'll be there," she said firmly. Victor's relief was palpable. "Thank you, I'm bringing Josephine and 2 other program graduates as well. The meeting's at the County Administrative Building. Meet me there at 2:30? Teresa nodded, then remembered. "But Michael gets out of school at 3. I always pick him up and bring him to the after-school program here." Victor thought for a moment. "Bring him with you? He can wait in the lobby with Madison? I'll have her meet you there." As Teresa returned to her desk, the gravity of the situation sank in. In a few hours she would stand before the county board, not with a carefully rehearsed speech, but with only her raw, unvarnished truth. And the future of everyone who depended on the program hung in the balance. The County Administrative Building was an imposing structure of glass and stone, projecting an aura of bureaucratic indifference. Teresa arrived with Michael in tow, her hands trembling as she signed in at the security desk. Madison was already waiting, greeting Michael warmly and leading him to a small seating area in the lobby with books and quiet toys. "You'll do great, Mom," Michael said, hugging her fiercely before joining Madison. Teresa found Victor and the others outside the board chamber, a somber group in varying degrees of professional attire. Josephine was there, along with a middle-aged man Teresa recognized from the employment division, and a young woman she didn't know. Victor himself looked uncharacteristically disheveled, his tie askew, his expression tight with stress. "They're running behind," he informed them. "Budget discussions always do." He pulled Teresa aside. "Are you still okay with this? It's going to be tense in there." Teresa straightened her shoulders. "I'm ready." Victor's gaze softened. "You remind me of her, you know." "Who?" "My mother," he gestured vaguely. "The same determination. She never let anything stop her either." For a moment, he seemed about to say more, but then the chamber doors opened. "Family Support Program representatives," a clerk called. "The board will see you now." The chamber was intimidating, a horseshoe of elevated desks where 7 board members sat, watching their small group approach the podium. In the gallery, several reporters and what appeared to be campaign staff for the county executive observed with keen interest. The board chair, a stern woman with steel-grey hair, consulted her papers. "Mr. Grant, you have 15 minutes to address the emergency spending review as it pertains to the Family Support Program. Please proceed." Victor stepped to the microphone. "Thank you, Madam Chair, honorable board members. I'll be brief. The Family Support Program prevents crime, reduces recidivism, keeps families together, and saves taxpayer money in the long run. But rather than quoting statistics, I'd like you to hear directly from the people whose lives have been changed." He stepped back, motioning for Josephine to take his place. One by one, they told their stories. Josephine's medical bankruptcy, the man's struggle with addiction after a workplace injury, the young woman's escape from domestic violence. Then, it was Teresa's turn. She approached the microphone, her legs unsteady but her resolve firm. The board members watched with impassive faces as she recounted the day she stole milk for her son, her arrest, and how the program had transformed her life. 6 months ago, I was a desperate mother who made a terrible choice, she concluded, her voice growing stronger. Today I'm a taxpayer, a contributing member of society, and most importantly, still a mother to my son. Without this program, I might be in jail and my son in foster care, both of us costing the county far more than my job and his after-school care. She paused, then added the words that had come to her while listening to the others speak. Every person in this room is one tragedy, one job loss, one medical emergency away from desperation. The difference is that most of you have safety nets, family, savings, connections. Programs like this one are the only safety net for people like me. Please don't cut it away. As she stepped back, the chamber remained silent. The board members exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others thoughtful. The chair cleared her throat. Thank you for your testimony. Does anyone from the county executive's office wish to respond? A man in an expensive suit rose from the gallery. Madam Chair, while these stories are certainly moving, the fact remains that the county faces significant budget constraints. Difficult choices must be made, and programs serving those who have broken the law. If I may, Victor interrupted, stepping forward again. The chair frowned. Mr. Grant, the executive's representative, has the floor. Just one final point. Madam Chair, Victor insisted, this program doesn't just serve those who have broken the law. It serves their children, innocent children who have done nothing wrong. Children like I once was. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The chair raised an eyebrow. Explain. Victor squared his shoulders. My mother was arrested for check fraud when I was 7 years old. She was trying to pay for my asthma medication. The prosecutor back then wasn't interested in her reasons, only in the conviction rate. She spent 14 months in prison while I bounced between foster homes. The room went completely still. Even the executive's representative seemed taken aback. When she got out, Victor continued, his voice tight with emotion, she couldn't find work with a criminal record. We lived in shelters, in her car sometimes. She did what she had to do to keep me fed and in school. Some of it wasn't legal. I grew up hating her for it, for the instability, for the shame. He paused, gathering himself. I put myself through college and law school determined to be nothing like her. I became a prosecutor to punish people like her, and then one day, sitting across from a mother who had stolen baby formula, I finally understood. My mother wasn't a criminal. She was just doing what any parent would do when systems fail them. Teresa watched as Victor's professional facade cracked, revealing the wounded child still within him. She thought of Michael waiting in the lobby, and a fierce protectiveness surged through her. This program exists because we can do better, Victor said. Because punishment without support only creates more victims. My mother died 3 years ago, still carrying a criminal record that prevented her from ever achieving stability. I started this program so other mothers, other children, wouldn't share our fate. He looked directly at the chairman. Cut our funding if you must, but know exactly what you're cutting. Not handouts for criminals, but second chances for families. Prevention, not punishment. Investment, not expense. The chair removed her glasses, her stern expression softening slightly. Thank you for your candor, Mr. Grant. She turned to her colleagues. I believe we have heard enough to make an informed decision. This meeting is adjourned for deliberation. As they filed out of the chamber, Teresa found herself walking beside Victor, who looked emotionally drained. I've never told that story publicly before, he admitted quietly. It was brave, Teresa said, like your mother. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She would have liked you. He squared his shoulders. Now we wait. Will the board vote to save the program that has given Teresa and so many others a second chance? And how will Victor's revelation change his relationship with Teresa and her son? In the lobby, they found Michael engrossed in a book with Madison. He looked up when they approached, his face brightening. Mom, did you tell your story good? Teresa managed to smile despite her anxiety. I tried, mijo. Mr. Victor, did you tell them about your mom too? Michael asked, surprising both adults. Victor kneeled to the boy's level. How did you know about my mom, buddy? Michael shrugged. You have her picture on your desk, and you look sad when you look at it, like Mom looks sad when she talks about my grandma who died before I was born. Victor glanced at Teresa, who was equally astonished by her son's perceptiveness. Yes, I told them about my mom. Good, Michael said decisively. Grown-ups need to know things. His simple wisdom brought unexpected laughter from the tense group. Even Diane, who had joined them after the hearing, cracked a smile. They retreated to a nearby cafe to await the board's decision. The atmosphere was subdued. No one quite knew what to say after Victor's revelation. Teresa bought Michael a hot chocolate and watched as he charmed the waitress, his social confidence growing daily. A far cry from the frightened boy who had watched police take his mother away 6 months earlier. Josephine checked her phone constantly. My contact on the board hasn't messaged yet. That could be good or bad. Victor stared into his coffee. They'll do what they're going to do. We made our case. Teresa studied him with new understanding. His mother's story explained so much. His passion for the program, his intervention in her case, even his carefully maintained professional distance. He had spent a lifetime building walls to protect himself from his own painful history. Whatever happens, she said quietly, what you've built matters. It changed my life, Michael's life. Victor looked up, his eyes tired but grateful. Thank you for saying that. The minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. Michael grew restless, so Teresa took him for a walk around the block. When they returned, Victor was on his phone, his expression unreadable. That was the chair's assistant, he said as he hung up. They've made their decision. They want us back at 4:30. Teresa checked her watch. 20 minutes. She texted Mrs. Chen to ask if she could pick Michael up from the office later than usual, receiving a quick affirmative response. As they walked back to the county building, Josephine fell into step beside Teresa. No matter what happens in there, we're family now. All of us. You know that, right? Teresa nodded, throat tight with emotion. The word family had been loaded with pain for so long. Her own parents gone, her marriage failed. Just Michael and herself against the world. But now, somehow, their circle had widened to include this unlikely group of wounded healers. The board chamber seemed smaller on their return, less intimidating. The same 7 faces watched as they took their seats, but something in the atmosphere had shifted. The chair called the meeting to order. After careful deliberation, we have reached a decision regarding the Family Support Program's funding status. She paused, surveying the room. By a vote of 5-2, the board has determined that the program shall retain its full funding allocation, with a 6-month review to assess ongoing effectiveness. A collective exhale swept through their group. Josephine squeezed Teresa's hand so hard it hurt. Furthermore, the chair continued, we recommend that the county executive explore opportunities to expand the program's model to additional departments where appropriate. Mr. Grant, you and your team are to be commended for your work. This meeting is adjourned. As the board members gathered their papers, several nodded respectfully toward Victor. The executive's representative had already slipped out a side door. Outside the chamber, the tension finally broke. Josephine hugged Teresa tightly. The man from employment punched the air triumphantly. Even Diane smiled broadly, her earlier frostiness toward Teresa apparently forgotten in the moment of shared victory. Victor stood slightly apart, receiving congratulations from the others with quiet dignity. When the initial celebration subsided, he approached Teresa. Your testimony made the difference, he said. The chair mentioned it specifically during deliberations. Teresa shook her head. It was your story, Victor. You showed them the human cost of these decisions. He looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. I never planned to share that. It just came out. Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest strength, Teresa said softly. My abuela used to say that. Victor nodded, his composure returning. We should get back to the office, spread the news. As they gathered their things, Michael tugged at Victor's sleeve. "Does this mean Mom still has her job? And I still get to go to after school?" Victor crouched down to the boy's eye level. "Absolutely, everything stays just the same." Michael considered this, then asked, "Can we go for ice cream to celebrate?" The unexpected question broke the last of the tension, and Victor laughed, a real laugh that reached his eyes. "I think that's an excellent idea. Ice cream for everyone." Teresa watched as Michael took Victor's hand, leading him toward the elevator with the confidence of a child who feels completely secure. Just months ago, her son had been withering from hunger and fear. Now he was thriving, making connections, feeling safe enough to ask for treats and expect joy. The contrast nearly overwhelmed her. From metal bars in a holding cell to this moment, a seemingly impossible journey, bridged by the compassion of a man who had transformed his own pain into purpose. As they stepped out into the late afternoon sunlight, Teresa allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope. Not just for tomorrow or next week, but for a future beyond mere survival, a future where her son could dream of penthouses, where she could build a career that mattered, where the mistakes of desperate moments didn't define entire lives. And perhaps, she thought as she watched Victor lifting Michael onto his shoulders, a future where families could be created from the broken pieces of painful pasts, forming something stronger and more beautiful than what had been lost. How will Teresa's new perspective on hope change her approach to life? And will Victor's vulnerability create space for deeper connections with those around him? The following Monday, the office atmosphere had transformed. Where tension and uncertainty had reigned, now there was renewed energy and purpose. Staff members who had been preparing for unemployment were instead planning program expansions. The board's decision had not only saved their jobs, but validated their mission. Teresa arrived to find a small plant on her desk, a peace lily with glossy green leaves and a card that simply read, "Thank you, Hack V." The gesture touched her deeply. She placed the plant near her computer monitor, where the sunlight from her small window would reach it. Victor himself was more visible in the office than usual, meeting with department heads, taking calls from board members and community partners, even joining the staff in the break room for lunch. The public revelation of his past seemed to have lifted some invisible burden from him, allowing a more authentic version to emerge. As Teresa updated the program database that afternoon, Diane stopped by her desk, something that almost never happened unless there was a problem. "I owe you an apology," the office manager said stiffly. Teresa looked up in surprise. "For what? For how I've treated you since you started? Diane hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I judged you based on how you came to us." Teresa kept her expression neutral, waiting. "My ex-husband was arrested for theft," Diane continued, her voice lower. "He stole to support a gambling addiction, cleaned out our savings, remortgaged our house without telling me. I lost everything because of his choices." Understanding dawned on Teresa. "So when you looked at me, I saw him," Diane admitted. "It wasn't fair, especially after hearing your story at the board meeting, and Victor's." She straightened her shoulders. "Anyway, I wanted to say I'm sorry. You've been an asset to this office." Teresa nodded. "Thank you. That means a lot." Diane retreated to her own desk, the brief moment of vulnerability clearly over. But something had shifted between them. Not friendship exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. At the end of the day, as Teresa was gathering her things to pick up Michael, Victor appeared in the doorway of her office, jacket in hand. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Of course." He sat in the chair across from her desk. "I've been thinking about what happens next. With the program review in 6 months, we need to strengthen our metrics, document our outcomes more thoroughly." Teresa nodded. "I've already started gathering data from the employment division." "I know. Josephine mentioned it." He smiled briefly. "But that's not actually what I wanted to discuss." He paused, seeming to search for words. "The board chair suggested we create a formal role for program graduates, someone who can serve as a liaison between staff and clients, who understands both perspectives." Teresa tilted her head, curious where this was leading. "I'd like to offer you that position," Victor said. Program Advocacy Coordinator. It would mean a pay increase, more responsibility, and you'd report directly to me. Teresa's breath caught. Are you serious? Completely. You've proven yourself invaluable these past months, and your testimony at the hearing showed me you have a gift for communicating our mission. He leaned forward. You don't have to decide right away. Think about it. Talk it over with Michael. I don't need to think about it, Teresa said immediately. Yes, I'd be honored. Victor's face brightened. Excellent. We'll make it official next week. He stood to leave, then hesitated. There's one more thing. The board's decision has generated some media interest. The Tribune wants to do a feature on the program, including profiles of staff and clients. They're particularly interested in our stories. He looked uncomfortable. Yours and mine. Teresa understood his hesitation. Their stories were powerful but painfully personal. What do you think we should do? Professionally, I think the publicity could help secure our future beyond the 6-month review. He ran a hand through his hair. Personally, I've spent 20 years avoiding talking about my mother. Now I've done it twice in 1 week. Sometimes things happen when we're ready for them, not before, Teresa said gently. Victor nodded. Maybe so. I told the reporter I'd discuss it with you and get back to her. As he turned to leave, Teresa was struck by how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had stood before him in court, powerless and terrified. Now they were colleagues, equals in a shared mission. Victor, she called after him. He paused in the doorway. Michael and I usually have pizza on Friday nights. Nothing fancy, but he's been asking when you might visit, if you'd like to join us. The invitation hung in the air between them, not romantic, but intimate in a different way. The opening of a private space to someone who had become important to them both. Victor's expression softened. I'd like that very much. That Friday evening, Teresa found herself nervously straightening her small apartment before Victor's arrival. The place was modest but clean, decorated with Michael's artwork and a few second-hand pieces she'd found at thrift stores. She had splurged on real plates instead of paper ones, and even bought a bottle of wine, something she hadn't done in years. Michael was excited, changing his shirt twice and asking when their guest would arrive every 5 minutes. The boy had formed an attachment to Victor that still puzzled Teresa. Perhaps he sensed a kindred spirit, someone else who understood what it meant to have a mother who had crossed lines out of love. When the doorbell rang, Michael raced to answer it. Teresa, close behind. Victor stood in the hallway, looking different in jeans and a casual button-down shirt, holding a small gift bag and a box of cookies. I brought dessert, he said, handing the cookies to Teresa, and something for the man of the house. He gave the gift bag to Michael, who opened it eagerly to find a model car kit. Cool, the boy exclaimed. Mom, can we build it after dinner? Of course, mijo. She smiled at Victor. Come in, pizza should be here any minute. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. They ate pizza at the small kitchen table, Michael dominating the conversation with school stories and questions for Victor about everything from his favorite superhero to whether he knew how to fix bicycles. After dinner, the three of them worked on the model car together, Victor showing Michael how to read the instructions and Teresa helping with the tiny decals. Later, after Michael had gone to bed, they sat in the living room with glasses of wine. The conversation flowed naturally from work to more personal topics, books they'd read, places they'd lived, memories of happier times with their mothers. Teresa found herself laughing more than she had in months, the weight of the past growing lighter with each shared story. Thank you for inviting me, Victor said as the evening drew to a close. This was nice. Normal. I don't get much normal in my life. You're welcome anytime, Teresa replied, meaning it. Michael adores you. Victor smiled. He's an amazing kid. You've done an incredible job with him, especially given the circumstances. I've had help, Teresa acknowledged, more than I ever expected 6 months ago. As she walked him to the door, a comfortable silence fell between them. Not the awkward silence of strangers, but the quiet understanding of two people who had seen each other's deepest wounds and recognized their own reflection. About the Tribune interview, Victor said. I've been thinking, if you're comfortable with it, I am too. Our stories together might help people understand what this program really means. Teresa nodded. Together, then. He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face. Together. The summer months that followed brought growth in every sense of the word. The Family Support Program expanded its services, adding a housing assistance division and partnerships with local businesses for job training. Teresa thrived in her new role, developing outreach initiatives and mentoring new program participants, with a compassion born of experience. Michael finished first grade with excellent grades and started a summer program for gifted children, his natural intelligence flourishing now that his basic needs were consistently met. He grew 2 inches and gained weight, his body catching up with his mind as stability became the norm, rather than the exception in his life. And Victor became a regular presence in their lives, joining them for movies, helping Michael with a science project, teaching Teresa to play chess. Their relationship evolved organically, neither of them in a rush to define it beyond friendship and mutual respect. Both carried too many scars to approach romance lightly, but the possibility hovered between them, unspoken but acknowledged. The Tribune article appeared in July, a full-page spread with photos of the program offices, quotes from board members, and most prominently the intertwined stories of Victor and Teresa. The reporter had handled their histories with sensitivity, focusing not on the sensational aspects, but on the transformative power of understanding and second chances. The public response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from community members touched by their stories. Other counties reached out about replicating the program model, and most surprisingly, former program participants began contacting the office, offering to share their own stories of rehabilitation and redemption. One rainy August afternoon, Teresa sat in her new office, a small but private space with a window overlooking the park across the street. On her desk sat the peace lily Victor had given her, now flourishing with new leaves and delicate white blooms. Beside it, a framed photo of Michael at his science fair, proudly displaying a blue ribbon, with Victor standing beside him, hand on the boy's shoulder. A knock at her door pulled her attention from the budget report she was reviewing. Victor stood in the doorway. "Got a minute? There's someone I'd like you to meet." He stepped aside to reveal an older woman in a food service uniform, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. "This is Diana Lopez," Victor said. "She was just arrested for stealing formula for her granddaughter. The store manager is pressing charges." Teresa stood immediately, extending her hand. "Please come in, sit down." The woman's eyes were red from crying, her shoulders hunched with shame and fear. "I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "My daughter's in the hospital. I'm watching the baby. My check doesn't come until next week." Teresa exchanged a glance with Victor, a world of understanding passing between them. "You're in the right place, Mrs. Lopez," she said gently. "We're going to help you." As she began explaining the program to the frightened grandmother, Teresa felt a profound sense of completion. The circle that had begun with her own desperate act had expanded to include others, creating a web of support where before there had been only isolation and judgment. Later, after Mrs. Lopez had left with emergency formula vouchers and an appointment to meet with the legal team about her case, Teresa found Victor waiting by her office. "Walk with me?" he asked. "I could use some fresh air." They strolled through the park, the summer rain having given way to golden afternoon sunlight. Children played on swings while parents watched from nearby benches, ordinary scenes of family, life that once had seemed impossibly distant to Teresa. "I keep thinking about that day in court," Victor said as they walked, "how close it came to going another way. If I hadn't recognized myself in your story—" "But you did," Teresa reminded him. "That's what matters." He nodded, then stopped walking, turning to face her. "I've been offered a position with the State Attorney General's office, directing a new division focused on rehabilitative justice programs." Teresa felt a conflicted surge of pride and disappointment. "That's incredible. When would you start?" "That's just it. I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to talk to you first." He took a deep breath. "It would mean relocating to the state capital." "Oh," Teresa tried to mask her disappointment. The capital was nearly 3 hours away, too far for regular visits, for pizza nights, for the undefined but precious relationship that had been growing between them. "I want to take it," Victor continued. "The platform would allow me to implement programs like ours across the state. It could help thousands of families." "Then you should absolutely accept," Teresa said firmly, pushing aside her personal feelings. "Your work is too important to limit to just our county." Victor studied her face. "But there's something else. The position comes with the authority to appoint a deputy director." He paused. "I'd like that person to be you." Teresa's breath caught. "Me?" "Your perspective is invaluable. Your experience, your compassion, your administrative skills, you're exactly what this initiative needs." His expression grew more intense. "Michael would have excellent schools, better opportunities, and we could continue what we've started, whatever that might become." Teresa's mind raced. A new city, a new position with even greater responsibility and impact, a new beginning for Michael, for herself, and the chance to explore the deepening connection with this man who had changed her life in ways neither of them could have imagined 6 months ago. "It's a lot to consider," Victor acknowledged. "Take whatever time you need. The position doesn't begin until October." As they continued walking, Teresa found herself seeing potential futures unfold before her. A year ago, her horizon had extended only to the next meal, the next bill, the next day. Now she was contemplating career paths, educational opportunities for her son, and yes, the possibility of love with someone who understood her completely. The transformation was almost too much to comprehend. From the desperate mother stealing milk to a respected professional being recruited for a statewide initiative. From a woman who felt invisible to one who was truly seen. From surviving to thriving. That evening, as she tucked Michael into bed, she told him about Victor's offer. "Would we move to a new house?" he asked, his eyes wide. "A new apartment? Probably, at first, in the capital city. Would Mr. Victor live with us?" The question startled her. "No, mijo, he would have his own place, but he would be nearby." Michael considered this. "I think we should go. You smile more when he's around, and I like it when you smile." Teresa kissed his forehead, marveling at his perception. "I like it when you smile too. Get some sleep, we have a lot to think about." After he fell asleep, Teresa sat on her small balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the darkening sky. The apartment that had once seemed a haven now felt like just one stop on a longer journey. She thought of the frightened woman she had been, clutching a stolen carton of milk, certain her life was over. How could she have known it was just beginning? The metallic chirp of her phone interrupted her thoughts. A text message from Victor. "Whatever you decide, know that I believe in you, as a colleague, as a friend, as whatever comes next." Teresa smiled, typing her response. "I believe in us, too." She pressed send, then added, "All of us." She leaned back in her chair, gazing up at the stars barely visible through the city lights. The universe had strange ways of answering prayers. Sometimes help came in the form you least expected, a prosecutor with compassion, a job that became a calling, a man who saw strength where others saw only weakness. And sometimes the thing that felt like your greatest shame became the spark for your greatest transformation. When Michael awoke the next morning, Teresa was ready with an answer. They would go to the capital. They would help build something that could change thousands of lives. They would embrace this new chapter, whatever it might hold, with courage and hope. After all, she thought as she prepared breakfast, watching her son chattering excitedly about their future adventure, the hardest step had already been taken. From darkness to light, from isolation to connection, from shame to purpose, from surviving to thriving. And they would never look back. Congratulations, type 9 in the comments. So that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel,